News with your host, Ryan Bruning.
And your other host, Thomas Hess.
Today we'll be talking about nuclear power.
Now, nuclear power has been around for a fair amount of time. It's gotten to the point where France is almost using it as 70% of their energy source. Now, why haven't Americans caught on?
Because they're always afraid of the power plants blowing up, radioactive. It's always that kind of problem, that fear in people. So, Thomas, what do you think is the cost of nuclear power?
Well, actually, one of the better benefits of nuclear power is that it costs about a third of what coal and traditional fuel costs use, which is one of the better benefits. Not to mention it releases zero emissions, so that's one other factor that a lot of people are looking into it. It's very clean. The only byproduct is, unfortunately, the nuclear waste, which is the big downside.
Yeah. Also, some environmental consequences has to do with getting the elements and everything that's required to produce nuclear power. Uranium, as well as plutonium production, is an environmental hazard because of the radioactive isotopes that contaminate land, animals, water, pretty much anything it comes in contact with. Also, these isotopes stay active for a very long time before they eventually break back down into the Earth.
And on top of that, you have to think that raw uranium needs to be mined. And as we all know, mining is fairly dangerous and tends to scar the Earth pretty badly. But on top of that, many of you may be wondering how the nuclear power plants work. Well, in fact, it's actually very similar to the way a coal power plant works. The main difference is that instead of burning coal, what you do is you take a uranium-235 or plutonium-239, and you start a chain reaction by firing a free neutron into it. And as time goes by, the reaction, each and every atom breaks apart, which causes another breaking apart of another atom. And it's controlled through the cooling. There's a cooling system built into the reactor, and as well as graphite control rods, which absorb any excess free neutrons. Now, the reactor needs to be kept at something called slightly supercritical mass, which means that each free neutron that bounces off, on average, there's more than one free neutron causing another reaction. So that causes the reactor to heat up. The reaction is then controlled by a coolant and graphite control rods, which absorb the free neutrons, and this heat turns water into steam and runs a turbine, much like a coal power plant. So in that respect, they're pretty much identical. It's just the nuclear power runs off nuclear energy. Anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I would actually like to add the government issues incentives to disapprove or support nuclear energy. First off, nuclear power does not contribute to global warming, so that is a positive fact to nuclear power that the government will obviously be pro for. As well as pollution control equipment can limit the amount of fossil fuels emitted into the environment. If nuclear power were to be proven less expensive, then there would probably be a lot more nuclear power plants, but
After the break, we'll have resident nuclear energy expert, Mr. Brian Stuckey, on the set to tell us a little bit more about it. And we're back with our guest speaker, Mr. Brian Stuckey. So what are your thoughts on nuclear energy?
I think nuclear energy is something that we need to look into and we definitely need to start using.
Any specific benefits that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I think that we can get away from fossil fuels, which we know is like a big problem right now, and it would
Small.
Yeah, that whole thing. And I think it would just provide us with a lot of relatively clean energy.
Well, any downsides, bad sides, anything you're afraid of with this new technology?
Nothing that I would be truly afraid of. I think there are things that people are afraid of. They're afraid of like the three-eyed fish and things like that, which could happen, like potentially, but I think we're all thinking of the old problems like Chernobyl, which are back in like the 70s. So if we had that kind of... Okay, thank you. But if we had that nowadays, though, the technology would be so much better, and the reactors would be so much cleaner, and it'd be safer, not to mention because if you put one up, you'd have to get it approved by all the people around, I think that there would be very few things we'd have to worry about. The only thing that would be a real big problem is the waste from the reactor. We'd have to find a place to put that, which they've made, but we're really just putting in a big hole in the ground, and we don't really know what to do with it other than just put it underground.
Well, I appreciate your opinion and your thought and your time, and
Well, thank you for having me, Thomas.
thank you, our guest speaker. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight, folks, and we've presented the information. Now it's your turn to decide.